It's all on this for Peru. Alex Valera.
Football, the world game, where sometimes the most unexpected athletes become heroes. Where sometimes a save not only dictates the result of a game, but the future of a sport in a nation. The unlikely hero in this story is Australian Socceroo goalkeeper Andrew Redmayne, who has made his name in the Australian A-League, reached the heights of the Premier League youth system as a youngster, almost decided to give it all up midway through his career, and ultimately made one of the biggest plays in Socceroos history. Let's get into this video. Andrew Redmayne was born in Gosford on the central coast of New South Wales. Starting his youth career at New South Wales Institute of Sport between 2005 and 2006, Redmayne was considered a talented youngster and recognised to have the potential to go pro. This potential was something English Premier League giants Arsenal also saw in the 16-year-old. Whilst on tour of Europe with the New South Wales Institute of Sport, Redmayne impressed the Arsenal scouts as he kept a clean sheet in a shock win for the New South Wales Institute over the Arsenal youth team. He would impress so much that the Gunners would offer an extended offer for Redmayne that would give Andrew an official trial with the club. Redmayne would be around the likes of world-class talent such as Thierry Henry, Dennis Bergkamp and Sol Campbell, whilst also apparently playing table tennis with World Cup winner Cesc Fabregas. Redmayne impressed whilst on trial at the Gunners and received a second trial with the club so they could further evaluate him. As Redmayne and his family arranged their travel arrangements for a trip to Hong Kong with the Arsenal team for a 7-a-side tournament, he was given heartbreaking news. The club would sign another young goalkeeper in the 15-year-old Wojciech Szczesny, a player who would become a club hero, going on to play 181 games for the Gunners and win 2 FA Cups and a Golden Glove award. This signing meant Arsenal had met the maximum limit of 9 goalkeepers at the club and would not offer Redmayne a contract. He was initially told that it was a contract being prepared for him by Arsenal Academy director Liam Brady at the time, before Arsene Wenger and his management chose Szczesny. Redmayne would return to Australia, playing now for the Australian Institute of Sport, and would have to think, what if? Completing his youth career and first season as a professional at the Australian Institute of Sport in the Victorian Premier League, he would sign for his hometown Central Coast Mariners for the 2007 and 8 A-League season. Stepping up from the VPL to Australia's top professional football league was a big step up for Redmayne, who would initially find it hard to find first team game time. He would make his debut in September of 2008, coming on as a substitute keeper for an injured Mark Bosnich. Redmayne would make his starting debut a week later, but would only ever make one more appearance for the club in 2 years. A stint at the Brisbane Roar was next for Redmayne, but again he could not find game time, playing twice in over 2 years. At the Roar he would win his first A-League championship though, which little did he know would be the first of many. It wasn't like Redmayne couldn't play, he was just young and unable to find opportunities throughout the 2 stints at the club. During this time he was making the Australian under-20 and under-23 squads with regularity. His first genuine shot at professional football would come with the Melbourne Heart, where he made 49 appearances in his 3 seasons with the club, receiving the first regular first-team action as a professional. A 1.5-year stint with the Western Sydney Wanderers would come next as their first-choice goalkeeper, but this would end poorly, as Andrew fell woefully out of form after performing pretty solidly for the majority of his career. This is where Redmayne's career hit a crossroad. In his second and final year with the Wanderers, Andrew considered retirement at just 27. He had fallen out of favour at the club and had already completed his goal of becoming a professional footballer. He no longer loved the game and felt it had become a grind. He had already been studying an education degree on the side, with his initial plans to pursue primary school teaching post his playing career. For Redmayne though, his love for the game was gone and he wanted to retire at the contract's end and work at a mate's cafe after completing his barista course. With these plans in mind, he still had half a season remaining on his 2-year deal with the Western Sydney Wanderers, but then was suddenly put into a swap deal with cross-city rivals Sydney FC. It was here Redmayne would be reunited with his first goalkeeping coach John Crawley. Moving to Sydney FC, Redmayne described himself as rubbish with little to no self-belief at the time. Crawley and Redmayne, together over the next 6 months, would do their best to change that, as Redmayne would find a renewed love for the sport. He would add to his championship medals, winning in his half-season with Sydney FC, deciding to ultimately stay on with the Sydney FC through the 2017 and 18 season, as their first-choice goalkeeper Danny Vukovic would sign in the Belgian league for Genk. This meant Redmayne would get a second chance of being a starting keeper, and under the coaching of Crawley, found his confidence and realised that potential that so many saw years prior. Redmayne would feature in a career-high 39 games, being named in the PFA A-League Team of the Year for the 2017-18 season. It wasn't until the 2018-19 season where we saw Redmayne truly hit the heights, with his crowning moment coming in the 2018-19 Grand Final against the Perth Glory at the Optus Stadium in Perth. It was here where fans would be introduced to Redmayne's iconic wiggle stance in the penalty shootout. Jumping back and forth and waving his arms erratically on the line, it looked funny, but it proved to be effective. He would save not one, but 2 penalties in the grand final as Sydney FC became champions. A reward for his consistent stellar form would come in the form of his first international cap for the Socceroos against South Korea, a truly amazing achievement that every footballer dreams of. Redmayne remained solid between the sticks at Sydney FC as they went back-to-back the following year, winning the A-League Championship. Redmayne continued to play solidly as Sydney's number 1, earning his second international cap for Australia in 2021 against Nepal in the World Cup qualifiers. With Australia missing out on automatic qualification for the 2022 World Cup in Qatar after a dismal campaign, they faced the daunting World Cup playoffs. Redmayne would make the Australian lineup as a reserve keeper behind the excellent Matty Ryan, perhaps our most accomplished Socceroo on the roster. By a red card or injury to Ryan, it was unlikely Redmayne would see playing time, but making the squad in itself was an achievement. A 2-1 victory over the UAE in Doha would mean Australia would face Peru, with the winner booking their place in the 2022 Qatar World Cup. It was a tense affair, with the Socceroos having the upper hand for the majority of the game. They were creating more of the chances, but this was not correlating to the scoreboard, and after 90 minutes the game would go into extra time with the scores at 0-0. Peru would go agonisingly close in the second half of extra time, hitting the post before the ball was scrambled away. Australia continued to hold on when in the 119th minute a decision by head coach Graham Arnold was made. Andrew Redmayne was being called on to substitute in the game for penalties. A remarkable call considering the amount of pressure Arnold was currently under and the stakes that were on the line. Substituting Socceroo captain Matty Ryan, who in his own right is a quality penalty shot stopper, was a massive call, and it was safe to say many fans were left scratching their heads. Ryan would come off the field though with confidence, saying to Redmayne as he departed, "All the best mate, this is your time." In fact, the Socceroos coaching staff in Arnold and Crawley had planned 6 weeks in advance for this particular moment, discussing a secret plan with Redmayne that he may be utilised if the game goes to penalties. This secret plan was not made aware to captain Matty Ryan though, or the rest of the Socceroos, but they all had faith in the Sydney FC goalkeeping star. Australia's Martin Boyle would step up first and miss from the spot. Australia were now behind as both nations replied with clinical penalties, with even the commentary questioning the decision of inputting Redmayne into the shootout. Redmayne though stuck to his guns and continued to gallivant between the sticks. The Australian coaching staff knew the Peruvians would have practiced all week studying Ryan's shot stopping and thought Redmayne would throw Peru's penalty plans off. In fact, Redmayne in the penalty shootout would even chuck Peru's goalkeeper's Pedro Galassi's drink bottle away, which contained instructions on Australia's penalty takers. The Aussies would try to gain every advantage they could, and it would pay dividends on Peru's third kick.
At Vincula, and Redmayne got a hand to it!
The ball crashing off the post meant both teams were level, and with both Rustich and Mobile slotting in their penalties, it became sudden death. It was time for Andrew Redmayne to shine. Only 5 years earlier, he was on the verge of retirement, but now was on Australian football's biggest stage. Redmayne took his time walking around the goal trying to gain any psychological advantage. He again transitioned into his so-called wiggle dance on the line as Alex Valera for Peru stepped up. A save here for Australia would win it. This is how Andrew Redmayne wrote his name in Australian sporting folklore.
Alex Valera. And Redmayne makes the save! It's a save that